So when you wake up in the morning, what is the very first thing that comes to your mind as you're getting up, knowing that you're going to face challenges throughout your entire day? Because let's face it, it's life. You're going to come across something at least once during your day that's just going to completely bog you down. So what perspective are you going to take? Are you going to take a positive outlook, or are you going to take a negative outlook? Growing up in Southern California, where it was always sunny, being in SoCal, I had the opportunity to participate in a lot of outdoor extreme sport activities, such as snowboarding, motocross, bicycle riding, skateboarding, basically anything that I could possibly do to go fast, you'd find me on it. So ever since I was little, my grandpa had a big, huge hill in the back of his apartment complex where there were cars driving because it was a parking lot. And mind that I was probably about like 6 years old, 5 years old around there, and I would get on my rollerblades and my bicycle, and I would go as fast as I possibly could and do anything I could do to give my mother a heart attack. So I've always had a need for speed, and my dad caught on pretty quickly. Since I had that need for speed, my dad, being so loving, was just like, hey, she has a passion for something, so let's pursue it. He got me a PW80 when I was little, and I started riding when I was just 7 years old. I was riding every possible chance that I could get. As I continued to pursue it, my dad understood how important it was to me. So every weekend, we started racing, and we continued this whenever we moved to Texas about 10 years ago. So I was racing every single weekend. Mind that school is about 5 days a week, right? My teachers actually had to sit down with my parents and say, hey, her education is more important than riding. And my dad was like, yes, but she wants to go professional in this. This is something she really wants to pursue, and she's very good at it. So my parents are very supportive, and every day after school, I would ride until the sun went down in our backyard because we had an acre lot, and I would do my homework after. So you can see where the priorities were on that. So this was my dream, was to be a professional motocross racer. So I trained and I trained for this big race that was coming up, and it was a huge national. A weekend before the race that I was training for all year, it was just supposed to be a practice race. And it was at Freestone County Raceway, and even to this day, I love that track. I was racing, and it was just a practice race. But mind you that it was completely muddy because it was storming the entire week. But because of racing, I don't know if you guys know anything about motocross, rain or shine, you race. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I was comfortable in the mud. I was like, yeah, I still want to race it. So we were running late, and we scurried out over there. I got onto the track, and there was just everybody was covered in mud. Kids were blowing up motors, and so on and so forth. So I go into my first corner, and I tip over because of the thickness of the mud. I couldn't even get up. So a couple people jumped over the gate, and they came over to help me. They helped me lift me out of the mud, and then my bike was completely caked where my tires weren't getting any type of traction whatsoever. But it was the last lap for practice before the big race. I was like, I'm gonna finish, and I'm not just gonna get off the track. So I continued on to the lap, but whenever I went over the finish line jump, another rider didn't see me fall, and he landed right on top of me and went right over my neck. I blacked out the first 5 minutes, and then I woke up. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever been knocked out for some reason, but you get this instinct, this natural instinct to move all your limbs. So as I tried moving all my limbs, I looked down at the back whenever I was on the backboard, and I looked at my mom, and she just had her hand over her mouth, and she was bawling because I started screaming that I couldn't move my arm. So in this moment of me not being able to move my arm, I was just in shock. There was blood all over my face because my helmet got ripped off my head, and I was listening to earphones, so the earphones came up and it swiped my eye. So I could barely see. So as of everything that I was able to see, I just started freaking out. The paramedic was leaning over me, and he quickly put a neck brace around my neck. And he's like, we need to get you out of here. So after many days of, we went to 3 different hospitals, and they all gave us different diagnoses. And luckily enough, my uncle is a doctor. My mom said, hey, this doesn't sound right at all because she can't move her arm. Because first they said it was a dislocated shoulder. The next they said it was a pinched nerve. I ended up going in the hospital, and they said that I had a brachial plexus injury, which basically means that my nerves are completely severed from my neck. So I have no movement whatsoever in my arm. So it's 100% paralyzed. So as being 12 years old and a young girl, I started trying to think, okay, I'm just gonna take this one day at a time. It was a lot for me to wrap my mind around being that age, but I told myself I could do it. The doctor stated that I was starting to get some bicep movement back in my arm. Until one day, me and my dad, we were driving down the freeway, and my mom was driving behind us, and she called my dad and said, hey, there's a guy that's swerving and is just driving crazy behind you. So like a good driver, my dad turned on the blinker and we moved into the other lane. However, whenever we moved into the other lane, the guy swerved out, then in, but then out, but then whenever he went back in again, he nicked our back tire, and my dad slung multiple cuss words, and he lost control of the vehicle. And so while I was in a neck brace, and while my arm was still in a sling, we flipped multiple times in our truck. So this, as you can see, is what the truck looked like before. And in 2006, this was a pretty awesome truck. But this was the result. So it was very traumatic. Luckily, nothing happened to my dad or I. My dad just broke a few bones in his rib cage. But because my mom was so worried, she said, we need to take you to the hospital right away and make sure you're okay. Because if I break anything in my arm or if anything happens to my arm, I have no idea because I can't feel it. So we went back to the hospital, and the doctor stated that everything that I was getting back in my arm, I completely lost. So basically kind of just sealed the deal. So at this point, I was convinced that someone was after me. I was like, oh man. So being 12 years old, going through all of these and going through, you know, women stuff and everything like that, I started thinking about middle school. I started thinking about high school. I started thinking about how am I ever gonna be able to fit in with kids? Am I ever gonna get a boyfriend? Are boys even gonna want a girl that has one arm? Am I even gonna make a good mom? Sometimes I still think about that. How am I gonna be able to care for a child with just one hand? Am I gonna be able to hold them? Would I accidentally drop them? So there were all these things that were going through my head, and then I was like, great, how am I gonna do my hair? And then my makeup. I was like, I'm gonna be ugly for the rest of my life. I couldn't even fathom it. So I started thinking about all these things, and I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna wake up in the morning and I'm gonna say I can do it. Because just because I have one arm does not mean I can't do anything I don't set my mind to. Because I can do anything I choose to do. I just gotta find different ways to do it. Yes. Which, in the end, makes me more unique. Yes. So, waking up with that attitude, I started to find more joy in my life. Because instead of looking at what I didn't have, I started looking at what I do have. So, I was going through college, and I got into DBU. I worked my butt off, and I was very happy that I graduated knowing that I participated in every little thing that I could in high school. I made the tennis team, I participated in choir, I made AP art classes 4 years in a row, and mind again that I had to relearn how to write and draw. So I won titles in all my vase competitions. I participated in just about everything you could think of in high school except for band. So I was really happy that I left high school knowing that I did not feel like I missed out on anything. So taking all of those things, I was like, college is gonna be great. I'm gonna be able to conquer so much. And so I started going through college, and my dad was watching my Facebook like a hawk because he wanted to make sure I wasn't doing anything wrong. I mean, I was a freshman in college, woohoo. But at that time, I started hanging out at the track again, and I started meeting new people, and I started socializing, and it felt amazing to be back at the track because all I thought about again was riding. Because trying to find my identity in something else that wasn't riding was hard because riding was my passion. It's what I loved aside from art and photography. And that just wasn't fulfilling it for me because I'm an adrenaline junkie. So roller coasters didn't do it, nothing did it. So I was like, I need to get back on a bike. And I was at that time where I was 18 and my parents couldn't tell me no. So my friends that I made at the track, I was like, hey, how do you think about helping me come up and rigging up a bike that I could ride? They're like, yeah, dude, let's do it. So my friend Connor Sanderson knew a guy that had a little pit bike, and it was a 110, and it was so much fun. So we flipped the throttle on the other side to where it rolls forward. So I got on the pit bike and I started riding it, and it was amazing. I was like, yes, this is it. So my friends, they lent me some gear, and so I was all suited up and everything, and I was ready to go. And then there was a gentleman at the track taking photos, and then he happened to get a screenshot of me. And mind that this is when Facebook was getting get really blazing fire and everything. So the guy posted the photo on Facebook, and he tagged me in it. I was like, great, now I have to tell my parents. So I came home one weekend from college, and I sat down with my parents. I was like, so we need to have a talk. I was like, don't worry, I didn't get expelled. I'm not into hard drugs. I'm healthy. I'm good. But we just need to talk about something. So I sat down with my parents, and I explained to them that I started riding again. And my dad was like, well, are you having fun? I said, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. He's like, are you happy? I said, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been. He's like, are you safe? I said, of course I'm safe. How could I not be safe? I'm good. And then he mentioned, well, if you keep riding, motocross is a thing where it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're gonna fall and damage yourself. So my dad was like, you're gonna fall, and if you break your other arm, you're screwed. You've got nothing except for your feet, which you can't do a whole lot except for playing Xbox, because I play Xbox with my feet. And I said, yeah, well, it's a risk I'm willing to take. So we sat down and we explained everything. I said, all right, well, if this is what you want to do, right now we don't support it because we don't think it's safe. And so I looked at my parents and I said, I understand. So I continued riding. I went to the track almost every weekend, and my dad finally came out and saw me at the track. And he was like, you know what? You're not going to let this go. I know you. Once you get determined and your mind's set on something, you're going to do it. So he said, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it right, and I want to make sure you're going to be safe. Because as a great dad, that's what he did. Because he wanted to make sure I was going to be okay. So he went half and half with me, and I got a CRF 150R, and I started riding again. And he got me the top notch of the gear. He got me 60 helmet, the best boots. I got a gear sponsor. He helped me get all the modifications done on my bike. He spent every penny that he could on the most expensive stuff. So I had full support from my dad. So as I started riding, I said, hey, I want to race. So my dad said, okay, if you want to race, but it's only going to be the small races. It's nothing going to be national-wise or anything. I said, okay, that's fine. But as I started doing small races, I convinced him to let me do a national. So I started racing, and I traveled to California, and I rode all the time in California. I ended up going to, qualified for a regional for the top national, basically in the whole United States. It's one of the hardest races you could possibly qualify for. And there's 2 steps you have to go through. You have to go through the regional, and then the qualifier, and then you make it to the race. And I made it. I passed the first step, and I got a 3rd place. So I was so stoked. And I was like, yes, I'm back on the game. So I was really happy. And the coolest part about it is I was doing it with one arm. I didn't go to the regional, but this showed me that, even though I broke my neck, I can still do it. I can still do anything I set my mind to. And that's true for everybody. As I was continuing to race, there was an adaptive class called Motorsport Adaptive. And they're like, hey, we'd love for you to come race with us. So I ended up being the first woman to compete in the Motorsport Adaptive. And these guys are phenomenal people. They all have their own stories. They're paralyzed from literally the waist down, and they're in wheelchairs, and they're jumping the biggest jumps out there. So that is, I couldn't do that. But it is amazing to be a part of a group where people can actually relate to me. So it really inspired me to keep pushing. And then, and then one of the guys that was in the motorsport adaptive, he said, "Hey, what else do you do?" And I was like, "I snowboard, and I really want to get back into snowboarding, but I need to find my balance again." He was like, "Well, there's an awesome adaptive snowboarding team, and I'd love to get you connected to it." So I was like, "Yeah, man, for sure." So I started this last year, and he got me connected with them, and I started on the snowboarding team. And I started my training and everything, and it's been going great so far, and I'm actually going back this year because my end goal is to make it to the USA team for the Paralympics. But, yeah. And then, I miss surfing so much, and because, being from Southern California. And so I finally learned how to wake surf this summer. And mine getting up on the board, again with one arm, was pretty difficult. But I got up on the second try, so I was pretty stoked about it. So now I found another addicting thing that I probably will partake in the summer. But I really enjoy doing that. So when you wake up in the morning, what are you going to tell yourself? Anything that comes your way, whether it's negative, positive, you should always think of it positively. There's so many opportunities that come from negative things that you can take. For me, it's my arm. But I don't let that stop me from doing anything. I put my hair up with the doorknob. I play Xbox with my feet. So you can do anything you set your mind to. It's just a matter of saying, you can do it. So, thank you.